Before we start, I would like you to hit that red subscribe button so that you never miss out on any of our videos. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Insane Worlds. 6. Polynesians to the Auckland Islands. The Polynesians were master mariners and spread far and wide through the Pacific Islands in the tropics. What is less well known is that they voyaged far to the south. While traditions that they reached Antarctica remain unproven, they are known to have reached the Auckland Islands. This remote, windswept island group lies 300 miles or 483 kilometers south of New Zealand. Hundreds of years before they were visited by Europeans, Polynesians arrived. They stayed long enough to build ovens, leaving behind tools and food remains. These have been dated to around 650 years ago. Why the settlement did not survive is unclear. Perhaps the settlers found the climate too harsh and left, or perhaps they died out. We may never know for sure. Number 5. Vikings to the Azores. Think the Portuguese discovered the Azores. Think again. Portuguese sailors first visited in the 1400s. However, historians have long wondered if they were the first to discover the islands and have often puzzled over the Azores' appearance on earlier maps. In 2021, academics offered an explanation. It is now thought that the Norse discovered the island group in the early Middle Ages. Genetic samples from mice found on the island show similarities to mice usually found in Scandinavia, but it was not just mice that the Norse left behind. Traces of animal feces in lake sediments have also been dated to well before the 1400s. Lastly, scientists show that ocean currents favored sailors traveling from northern Europe. Luckily for the Portuguese, by the 1400s, the currents had shifted, giving them favorable winds into the Atlantic and leaving mariners from northern Europe out in the cold. Number 4. Carthaginians to West Africa. If the General Hannibal is the most famous Carthaginian in history, Hanno the Navigator runs a close second. The mariner sailed at the head of a fleet of 60 ships down the West African coast around 500 BC. The fleet established many settlements along the way, though there is much debate about where they were. We only know of the voyage from a single text, and much of it is hard to interpret. It speaks of torrents of fire flowing down to the sea and sailors seeing a massive mountain speculated by some of Mount Kakulima Guineas. Scholars disagree on how far Hanno traveled, but after 35 days of sailing, he turned back due to a lack of food. Number 3. Polynesians to Easter Island. Also known as Rapa Nui, Easter Island is as remote as can be. The nearest inhabited island is almost 1,300 miles or 2,092 kilometers away. The Polynesians arrived between 800 and 1,200 after a voyage of at least 1,600 miles or 2,575 kilometers and probably more. Their arrival gave rise to a fascinating and unique culture. The most famous examples of this are the moai, the massive stone statues that can be found all over the island. However, the Rapa Nui is also created and is unique written language called Rongo Rongo. Examples can be found in museums and libraries across the world, but the knowledge of how to read it has been lost. Linguists have puzzled over the surviving text for decades. The history of Easter Island is not all rosy. From 1400s onward, deforestation began to wreak havoc on the island, and by around 1650, most trees had been felled for fuel and building materials. Rapa Nui society collapsed and was still recovering by the time Europeans arrived in 1722. Number 2. Native Americans to Eastern Polynesia. For decades, it was thought that Easter Island was the last stop on the Polynesians' trek across the Pacific. However, it is now thought possible the Polynesians went even further. In 2020, evidence of an ancient voyage from Polynesia to South America was announced. The voyage was dated to around 1200 and left its mark in the DNA of several Polynesian populations. The big question is who visited whom. The introduction of South American DNA was traced to around 1150 on the island of Fatu Hiva. Scientists believe that island was settled around that time, suggesting South American people were already there when the Polynesians arrived. However, Polynesians were voyaging far and wide in the same period, meaning that it is equally likely they arrived in South America and Native Americans came back with them. One thing is certain, both groups were no strangers to long ocean voyages. Number 1. Chinese to Yemen and East Africa. Much has been claimed for the voyages of Zheng He in the early 1400s. While it is not likely that Zheng He circumnavigated the world, His armada of Ming ships out in at many ports throughout the Indian Ocean in the 1410s and 1420s. They reached the Middle East and Africa after a voyage of over 2,500 miles or 4,023 kilometers, decades before Vasco da Gama's arrival in the ocean. In 1498, Chinese junks arrived in Yemen in 1419 and traded silk woven with gold, musk, and China. Pieces of Ming porcelain dated to the period have also been found in Kenya, and a giraffe found its way to China in 1415. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our videos in the future. Also watch the 2 videos that are on your screen because I'm sure you love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video.